If you're just getting logged in, we were trying to give people a little bit of time before we got started so that they would have a chance to get logged in, but thought I would fill you in on the little graph that we have here as the most common reasons that people are hoping to utilize my CHD Sidekick. So all of these we plan to touch on tonight, but interesting to see. That's kind of what we were thinking of the main reasons people would want to take advantage of this. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Um, hey guys, I'm Ellen Boyer, the president and co-founder of the Brett Boyer Foundation. I'm Sadie Brett Boyer's mom. So glad to have anybody that's joining us tonight, everybody anxious to hear about my CHD Sidekick. Thank you for taking time, especially at this hour of the day, to spend with us to learn about this. So whether you are a new parent who has just received a CHD diagnosis, whether you've been walking this journey for years, or whether you're joining us as a provider or supporter, we're so grateful that you're here. Our goal tonight is really just to show you how user-friendly My CHD Sidekick is and how user-friendly it can be. We want to help you get comfortable using it and hopefully leave you feeling excited about having this resource by your side. Um, One thing that we heard over and over from families after receiving a CHD diagnosis is that life gets kind of complicated pretty fast. And suddenly you're learning what feels like a new language, um, meeting countless specialists that are hard to keep up with, trying to remember medications, procedures, what questions you were going to ask your doctor at your next appointment, all while, being a parent or a patient yourself, living your life. Um, and as a foundation, we kept asking ourselves, what would have helped us? What would we have wanted at the bedside through Brett's journey? And that's really where the idea of my CHD sidekick began, because I had so many paper charts, dry erase boards with her feeding schedules, notes in my, notes app, text directly to Bo that probably didn't make sense to him. And we wanted to create something that would help families stay organized, feel more informed, and hopefully make this overwhelming journey just a little bit more manageable. Um, for those of you who don't know us, our daughter, Sadie Brett Boyer, had Down syndrome, which was our favorite thing about her, and congenital heart disease. And the Brett Boyer Foundation was founded in her honor to improve the lives of children and families affected by CHD through research, family support, mental health initiatives, and resources like the one we're going to talk about today. Um, at the end of this webinar, I hope you see how easy this platform can be to use. I think that it will be as useful as you let it be and as useful as you put into it, um, and begin thinking about how it could help support your own family, because we can't take that CHD diagnosis away, but we want to make sure that you don't have to navigate this alone. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up before we get started. First of all, if anything happens that Wi-Fi gets spotty, please bear with us. This is our first webinar, and we will make it happen, but have a little grace for us as we go. We'd like to ask, and that if any time throughout the webinar that you might have a question, please put that in the Q&A at the bottom. We will answer as many of those questions as we can at the end tonight. And if something happens that we aren't able to answer all the questions, we will follow up after the webinar and make sure that it gets done. I want to go ahead and introduce Ashley, my now dear friend and fellow heart mom. Ashley and I met and bonded over this journey that comes with a CHD diagnosis affecting your family. And really, we're trying to talk through together what can we do to improve the lives of the parents at bedside and at home. And she was telling me about a platform that she had been using called My and how it had been super helpful for her as her daughter's primary caregiver to be able to relay the important information. And the more we dug into it, we really wanted to make sure that we could make that available free to all heart families because cost we know is sometimes, prohibitive for a lot of families that are going through this. If it wasn't when you got diagnosed, it's inevitably going to be a problem. And so, but the more we talked about it, we worked with Mijo and have really worked really hard to customize this platform to be as user-friendly for CHD families as possible. Whether you are the patient and you're using this to organize your own care, or you are the caregiver making sure that you can help translate things to other family members, school nurses, teachers, or the pediatrician. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my dear friend Ashley, who is very skilled in being able to navigate this platform and is going to share with you her journey with My CHD Sidekick and how it has been helpful for her family. So welcome, Ashley. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ellen. That is so beautiful. And it's truly an honor for me to have been able to collaborate with you on this project and with the Brett Boyer Foundation. It's such a pleasure. Um, and I would just want to take this opportunity to share our journey with Sophie and give you all a window into her story because I think a lot of elements will perhaps resonate with you, other heart parents, and also talk to you about how this app can be useful to your family and to your child who has congenital heart disease. So I'm going to tell you about our 3-year-old daughter, Sophie. She's the youngest of 5 children, and she has a rare and complex congenital heart defect called truncus arteriosus. We actually just celebrated her third, what we call in the heart community, heartiversary. So the anniversary of when her heart was initially repaired, right after her third birthday. And if you're on this webinar, you already know that the CHD journey is unlike anything else, and Sophie's has been no exception. She had her first heart surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital when she was 7 days old. And due to unexpected complications, she ended up having to have a second open heart surgery 36 hours later, which led to an extended and complex recovery. But thankfully, she came home in August 2023 for the first time after 86 days in the hospital. And this may resonate with many of you parents who have come home for the first time with your heart warrior. Sophie had a feeding tube. She had twice daily respiratory treatments due to residual lung disease from a long intubation. She was receiving a total of 23 syringes of medication every day. And she had countless follow-up appointments with her cardiologist, her specialists, her pediatrician. She was also on a detailed months-long schedule to slowly wean off of the heavy pain medications that she had been on while in the hospital. So we had her on a wean for with methadone and clonidine and had to carefully track any symptoms of withdrawal so that we could make very slight adjustments to her medications. And this is where My CHD Sidekick comes in. I really wish I'd had this amazing app from the moment we first came home with Sophie. Every time we visited a specialist, a therapist, or just her regular pediatrician, I was sleep deprived, I was overwhelmed. I was also, I was dealing with my own medical PTSD from having watched my daughter go through so much. And I was bombarded with the same questions over and over that I felt like I had answered many times before, or questions that I felt like should have been highlighted as the most basic information in her chart. So, as many of you have experienced, the common question I think at the beginning of every appointment is usually from a nurse or a medical assistant asking, okay, what current medications is your child, or what is your child currently taking? And usually that was easy for me to clear up from memory because I'm the primary caretaker for Sophie in terms of all of her medical needs. But there were many times where I would have to log into my chart to confirm concentrations or exact doses of the medications she was taking. It would have been really nice if I could just hand over her My CHD Sidekick journal to whoever was doing the intake. And I feel like the harder issue was summarizing the vast loads of medical notes and simplifying explanations of her story and diagnoses to providers. I needed to develop an elevator pitch about her journey. So, where she was, where she is now, and where she was going, what was next. not only for her heart condition, but also for every major organ that was affected by her complicated course. So, for example, when I was with her feeding specialist, I shared a very different version of her story than when I was with her cardiologist. And when I was with her GI team, I would, for example, share a lot about feeding, maybe some about cardiology, but nothing about pulmonology. But when I was with pulmonology, I shared a lot of information about cardiology and nothing about feeding. So, this is just a snapshot of the challenges I think that heart parents and primary caretakers of medically complex children face every day. So, of course, we schedule and show up to appointments and take advantage of every service possible to do best by our child. And in the process, we're expected to know and be able to summarize the whole story and also be sophisticated enough to know which parts to share with which providers. So, my CHD Sidekick has been such a great resource for storing all this information in one place and not feeling like I have to remember all the information at all times. One of the best features is that prior to meeting with a specialist who I may only see every 6 months or 1 year, I can email her or send via my chart a copy of her journal so that providers can get an update on Sophie and get the full picture. And we can take the time that we have together during the appointment to really tackle what that specialist is there for. And so that I don't have to spend a lot of time giving all of that background. So, despite the fact that Sophie's doing so well, I still spend an enormous amount of time every day on her health needs. I draw up and give her medications twice a day. I prepare for her night feeds. I schedule and attend her appointments. I research and try to understand her heart and GI conditions. I advocate for her needs with pharmacies and insurance companies. And I often worry about what would happen if I was out of commission for a day or worse. I also know that my husband and other family members and people who love Sophie want to step up more in her medical journey. And my CHD Sidekick has made that possible. The more that I filled out the journal, the more enthusiastic I got about this answer to potentially liberating me from always having to keep everything up here, always having to summarize off the cuff, and always worrying that the most important information would not be in the hands of her loved ones who, again, want to be so involved as well in her medical journey. So, without further ado, we're going to work together to show you how easy it is to fill out a My CHD Sidekick journal. And what we're going to do is share with you a sample profile. So we're sharing a profile. The name of the girl who has CHD here in the sample profile is Ava Smith.
I wanted to
And
point out, sorry, one little thing,
yeah,
Ashley, that one thing that I think any seasoned CHD parent or caregiver or provider may notice really quickly about this profile is that it's completely fictional. It's not based on a real child or a real family. And you'll notice that a lot of the diagnosis that we've listed on there, medication, surgeries, that they don't typically go together. And wanted to call out that that was completely intentional because we wanted to create one profile that would showcase as many features of my CHD Sidekick as possible, so that every family, regardless of their child's diagnosis, would be able to see how this platform might work for them. Um, because each kid with CHD is so unique, even if they have the same diagnosis based on their CHD, may have other things that go along with that. So we tried to just put as much information on Ava's profile so that you guys could really see the full scope of what is possible. Sorry about that, Ashley. I just wanted
no,
to,
that's
yeah,
that's really
disclaimer.
important for you all to know that putting all of this together may not make sense in terms of the medical piece, but we wanted to show you how you can optimize this app and how you can use each section. And we will make sure that all attendees get a copy of this sample journal. So as we're scrolling through Ava's sample journal, and you see information where, oh, you would love to copy and paste that into your child's because it's similar information or use similar language, don't worry, we'll make sure that you get a copy of this, which could be helpful when you're filling out your own or your child's journal. But we just wanted to show you first, before we show you how to create a profile, we want to show you what a final product can look like, which is why we have this up here and scrolled through to show you all the various sections. One of the things that we want to highlight on this finished profile is the visual story. This is my favorite part of this My CHD journal. The visual story is incredibly helpful because it shows the color and the personality, right? It is the color and personality of the journal. And it can really help providers, child life specialists, nurses, and other medical team members to understand what makes your child tick, what do they like, what are their hobbies, what helps them get through appointments. You have three areas where you can post pictures or videos to really help providers to get a sense of your child and their personality. So in this case, Ava is talking about, or her parents who filled this out, they're talking about how her favorite holiday is the 4th of July. And then in the next piece, we have a little video of her brother and her dog who she considers her best friends. So this is a great opportunity to get a window into the life outside of the hospital of these CHD patients.
I think we've talked about this before, Ashley, but this is one of my favorite features too. So that if your child really struggles with blood draws or they've got a lot of anxiety about their next inpatient stay or anything, this is going to be your opportunity to share with the care team, like you said, child life specialist. Give everybody, let's set everybody up for success. Give them the tools to be able to say, like, look, you want to get on her good side, you want to lower, the anxiety in the room. Let's talk about her brother and her dog. These are the things that they love. Um, and these are the things that the care team really does want to know, and they want it to go smooth just as much as anyone. So I really feel like this is a unique feature that certainly a lot of different charts can't paint this picture. So
Exactly. And so now that you all have gotten a glimpse of her journal, of Ava's journal, and what a final copy can look like, we're going to now show you how you can get started on creating your own account. We want to show you how you can invest 5 or 10 minutes even, and you'll end up with a product. So this is not something that you have to set aside 5 hours to do all at once. So on the let's get started piece, you're going to actually, if you are the parent filling this out for your child, then you will put your information there for let's get started. Um, the beautiful thing also about My CHD Sidekick is it's also for teens and adults with CHD. So if you are the patient, and you can create a profile for yourself. But if you're creating this for your child, you're going to select for a loved one. And then here you're just going to put your child's first and last name. So we're doing Ava Smith again, with, her fake birthday. She's female. And then you click next, and you'll be prompted to upload a photo. And I do recommend that if you go ahead and make a journal for your child, if you can upload a photo right away, it really does motivate you, I think, to keep going, because you can see how immediately we've just typed in a few details of information, but it's a beautiful format here, for Ava. So we already have the journal started. And Ellen, I wasn't sure if there was anything else you wanted to add at this point.
This was, well, one of the things that I had talked about before, like if you are creating this for your child or teen, this to me is such a wonderful thing to be able to pass off to them, for them to be empowered to be responsible for their own care. I've spoken to several different moms that, like, knowing that, if say this person is 17 years old and they had a G tube when they were 1 or 2 and haven't had it since then, this is the type of stuff, like, it's not something that they need to be reminded of every day, but it is something that providers are going to need to know as they get, on into being an ACHD patient. Um, so I feel like this would be something great for the primary caregiver to fill out, help their CHD kid, young adult fill out, and then be able to empower them to say, you've got everything you need right here to be able to say, if you go to the school nurse, you're heading to college, you're now going to be, you need this stuff at your fingertips. It would be right there, and they wouldn't have to dig through a my chart to see what happened when they were 18 months old.
Yes, that's such a great feature. It's it's a way to almost, it's symbolic of how parents can pass that baton and empower their children to take charge of their medical journey. Um, so if we go, we're going to show how you will just fill out this basic demographic information. So again, you can even get started with just the information that you know. So put in your child's height, weight, blood type if you know it. And then everything saves automatically. So you can check your progress at any time. So we just, again, put in a couple more pieces of data and it immediately uploads into this very well thought out format. The next section that we're going to talk about is the critical care section. This is where you can include critical information in case of an emergency or even important information that should be front and center for regular visits. Most of us as heart parents know that CHD patients often have oxygen saturation goal that's lower than 100%. And this isn't something that every medical assistant or nurse in your pediatrician's office or even your specialist office is going to remember about your child. So you can put information here like this is the baseline oxygen saturation goal. And then if oxygen drops below 75%, call 911. So this not only helps the medical team, but also everyone at home or school who's taking care of your child. It helps keep everyone on the same page in terms of what constitutes an emergency.
For sure. This is one of the things I definitely would have highlighted here several times as we've relived things that happened with us. Brett's O2 saturations, her baseline was at 85. So her cardiologist reminded us, do not let them put oxygen on her. This is what she's going to, until her repair, this is what her oxygen saturations would be. But if you were at urgent care and she showed up with 85, for a heart healthy kid, obviously 85 is not normal. But for her, that's where it was better for her lungs to not receive oxygen and to let her stay at 85. So these are the things though, like if my mom were babysitting, she would not have known that. Or if, anyone else were babysitting or the school nurse, these are things that they need to be empowered to know those critical information in case of emergency.
Exactly. Now, the next section that we're going to show you how to fill out, we're not going to fill out every single section here. We're just going to fill out enough to show you how rewarding it can be when you just invest 5 or 10 minutes in getting started. So for the getting to know me, similar to the visual story, you can put as little or as much as you want here, but it's a great place to put your child's diagnoses, but also, again, add some color and personality. Talk about your child's likes, dislikes, what characters are they into these days, what are their hobbies. Again, this really helps providers to make a connection with your child and see who they are outside of the walls of the hospital. And then along with that section, you have these descriptors or icons, which I think are really important visuals because, again, we have this 1 or 2 pager that we're trying to make with the most pertinent information. And so there are visual descriptors or icons that show uh, diagnoses, if there is an allergy, if there's any equipment like oxygen, a ventilator, G tube. So those visuals kind of go along with the getting to know me section. And can also relate to the critical care information. For example, this amoxicillin allergy, you can reiterate any kind of very serious allergy in that critical care information section if you want. Then the next section is very straightforward. Now, this takes a little time, but I don't know how many times I had to log into my chart to look at and check Sophie's meds at different appointments. Maybe it was just the dosage or the concentration of the medication, right? Which I didn't know off the top of my head. So if you can pull up your child's My chart and copy their medications, the dosage amount, the units, the frequency, how often, is it daily, is it twice daily, and any other notes like giving pharmacy 48 hours notice on a refill. It's really helpful, I think, to have all of your current medications right there on the front page of this journal so that every time you go to appointments, when the person doing intake is getting an update on your medications, you can just hand over the journal and
And
it makes it seamless.
one of the ways definitely that this would have been helpful to me was that we had to change, for example, for Brett's Lasix, every time that she gained the slightest bit of weight, all of that, we were changing her dosage very often. And so when I'd get home from clinic, it was so hard for me to remember, wait, what is the current? So this is a place, there's a place for you to say, on this date, we changed her meds to this many milligrams due to weight increase. Or you could say, who this doctor changed it to this because of this. And that way, you've got the most accurate information because I was writing it on different sheets and everything. And it's hard when even at my sharpest, it's hard for me to keep up, but you're sleep deprived and it's hard to remember, was this visit or was this the last one? And so I love that there is under that you can say everything or say you're going out of town and you need someone to know how to give that Lasix dose, you would be able to put in the notes must be done with food or whatever information they need to know about that.
That's a great point, Ellen. I know in our case, there's one medication that Sophie cannot receive through her G tube
Yep.
because it clogs the tube, so we give that one orally. Um, so those little
Yeah,
details can make a big difference.
for sure.
And just think, parents, about how many times you might have written down the med list on a piece of paper that inevitably gets lost or written on the whiteboard, while you're inpatient. So this eliminates all those times that you have to write it down. And what's great is you can go into your My CHD Sidekick at any point and make updates, and it will save automatically. So your journal is very much a fluid document as your child grows. And things change and medications drop off, you might be making adjustments to that journal, but you don't have to start from scratch with a whole new document.
Right.
So next is the pharmacy section. I know my favorite calls or my top 5 people I make calls to. I know the pharmacy for Sophie is up there. And so every CHD parent knows that they end up spending a lot of time on the phone renewing prescriptions,
Yep.
uh, figuring all of that out, figuring out if you're going to pick them up or have it delivered. So having that pharmacy information right on the front page of your journal is very helpful. Okay, and then the next section that we'll do, oh, did we miss conditions or is that? Okay, oh, emergency contacts. So again, very straightforward. You can put as few or as many as you'd like. It can be just mom and dad. It could be mom, dad, and grandma, mom, dad, grandma, and a nanny. But this is great information, especially again for daycares, schools, camps, to have those emergency contacts right on the front page. And I really like the way that the immunization section is done here because instead of filling up the page with all of your child's immunizations, which really isn't like the primary goal of MeJo, you can just select whether or not the child's immunizations are up to date for their age. And if not, in the notes section, you can talk about if there's a delayed schedule or a vaccine that your child is exempt from because of their condition. So again, very straightforward, but can be extremely important. And then under my conditions, this is where we've customized under the condition section, we've added the top CHDs, I think the top 15 CHDs. So you can actually choose from the drop-down tab your child's or your heart condition. And if you want to add notes, you can. That's the beauty of this app. You can put as little or as much as you want. You can also put other conditions that your child faces or genetic conditions, anything you feel is important for providers and the care team to know. And you can see, again, we continue to show you every time we add information. We're showing you how you can preview the journal. So here we've spent less than 10 minutes adding information, most of which we knew or you will know off the top of your head, right? And we have a beautiful page here, which is we're so much better off than we were 20 minutes ago, right? Now you have something to show for it. It's professional looking. And what's great is you can say, all right, I'm done for today. And I'm going to spend 5 minutes every day for the next week updating the other sections. So you can break it down and but it's very rewarding, even just spending 5 or 10 minutes on this website making a journal. Here, we're just going to blow through the other sections to show you again how expansive this app is and how much you can put if you choose to. So primary care physician, my team. For this one, for Sophie, I put her cardiologist, her pulmonologist, her GI team. Um, if there's a special way to reach a physician or like a faster way to get an appointment, I put that in the notes section because for some physicians, it's better to go through my chart. For some, it's better to call a certain number. So I think those little tricks of the trade are also really important to put in there. Again, if something happened and my husband had to take over for a day, he would have all of that information right in front of him. Again, for medical devices and equipment, we talked about common things that heart patients will have, like feeding tubes, oxygen, sometimes a trach. And so here you can put the device or equipment name and also the specifications. So for Sophie's, she has a G tube, and I put the brand and size of her current G tube. So if we were to end up in an emergency room on vacation and her G tube fell out or became defective, I would know exactly what size to ask for in a hospital that may not have her medical chart. So again, we added some information, and there the app has had added the whole new section on the printout of the journal. And then, of course, my school, it could also be a daycare or a preschool or a camp, but you can add that information. And then allergies, as we talked about earlier, if there's severe allergies, you can put it in the critical care information all the way at the top. But this is also an option here if you have several food allergies or other allergies that you want to list. And then my second favorite aspect of this app after the visual story is the useful health info. And the reason I love this section is because it's so open-ended, but it can still be part of a one-pager or two-pager. So you decide what is missing. What do I really want to highlight on my child's journal? What do I really want providers to know or see? Maybe you want to share, this is what helps my child who has medical PTSD to get through appointments.
Yep.
Maybe you can talk about specific fears that they have. My daughter likes cocoa melon. So every time she goes in for an echo or has a procedure, the child life specialists know that, all right, let's pull up cocoa melon and watch the wheels on the bus on repeat. So the other ways that you can use this, again, it's very open-ended. I've used this to explain a past complicated surgery that Sophie had. It was a GI-related surgery, so it wasn't heart-related, but she ended up having a surgery that failed. And I've had to explain what happened. It was a rare occurrence. I've had to explain it over and over again to different providers. So sometimes it's nice to be able to just point to that summary. Remember what happened. Here's the summary. Some parents, they've been through so much trauma, they don't feel like talking about what happened. You may have a day where you're too tired to go through it all again, or it's too emotional. So again, you can use that section to write down information that you may not want to have to explain out loud, but that's really important. It's also a great place to put upcoming procedures. You end up in an emergency room, you're in a, you're in a panic state, and you forget to tell the provider taking care of your child that, oh, they're scheduled to have another heart procedure in 2 weeks. So again, this is a really open-ended but useful section. My procedures, again, you can use that, as much or as little as you want. So you can put every single procedure, surgery your child has had, or just the ones that you feel like are the most important. But I think where this is the most helpful is, I know in our daughter's case and many other CHD patients, they receive care in multiple locations. My daughter's home and her first surgery is Johns Hopkins Hospital. That's where her current cardiologist is. But she has had a procedure at Boston Children's. And so this really helps surgeons and doctors to understand, okay, this procedure was done by this particular surgeon at this institution on this date. It helps you as the parents and the caretakers to keep it all together, but also helps the medical team to understand, especially because their My Chart system may not sync with every other system in, other hospital system. So I think that this is a really important and helpful part of My CHD Sidekick, which in some ways is, it enhances what you can find in the My Chart because it's all in one place.
That's perfect. That's definitely another one of the things that I'm constantly hearing, whether they get their surgical care in one place, GI care in another, and being able to have, all those things are not communicating into one chart. This is one place that it could live so that everybody's on the same page and aware of what's happening at a different institution.
Exactly. And then again, this last section here, optional. If your child is receiving PT, OT, feeding therapy, you want to keep that all in one place, or you don't have to, you don't want to have to repeat to your cardiologist and your pediatrician where your child is getting all these therapies and with whom, you can put it there in that section. So again, we want to reiterate that even though this may seem like a lot and seem overwhelming, you can invest 10 minutes in filling out what you already know and have a product. And then if you want to go back and fill in those other sections as time goes on, then that's great too. You can really customize this for your own needs. And we're going to actually run through like a few other sections. Now that we've gone through everything you can put in the journal, we want to show you how you can share that journal and a couple other features before we get into answering questions. So when you can either download the journal or and like attach it or print it out. You can laminate it and put it on your refrigerator. You can email it to grandma. You can email it to your doctor.
Put it
You
on the
also,
car seat. I've heard of a lot of people wanting to put it on the car
yeah,
seat, in the stroller, all the things.
put a copy everywhere. And you can also clear different sections that you don't feel are needed for that particular printout. So if you wanted to print out a version that was just for grandma and you don't want to have the surgical history and the immunizations and you just wanted like the most important things and you wanted it to be just one page, you can customize the printout to just reflect the information that you want to share that particular time. So I think that's a wonderful feature. And when you select different sections, it doesn't delete anything in your journal. It just creates a customized version for how you want to use it in that moment. And then the other way you can share it is, let's say you do end up in an emergency room on vacation, or you end up at an unexpected hospital visit, and you wanted to share the journal with the attending provider or whoever else is taking care of your child. If they're able to share their email or cell phone number, you can email or text the journal to them and they receive it immediately. And you can decide if you want to share for 12 hours, 1 week, indefinitely. So you can select that from a privacy standpoint. And as long as the provider has your child's date of birth or your date of birth, if you're the CHD patient, they can view your journal. So again, lots of easy ways to share it. And the app is actually a web app. And I know some people have asked, why is it not a downloadable app on your, like for your phone? And I think part of what the main platform, MyMejo, what they've argued is that you can access this from anywhere. As long as you have an internet connection, you can go to the web app and be able to access your journal as long as you have your username and password.
I think the other benefit is that then you could send to your provider and they can open it from where they are. They would not be able to download an app for every different person. So this is the smartest way to make it accessible for everybody. And so Ashley, one other thing, speaking of that, so for Sophie, both you and your husband have the same logins and so that both of you, if he's home taking care of different meds, he could document. And then when you are, no matter where you are, you could update as well.
That's exactly right. And that's a great segue into talking about the tracker and the documents. So I guess we'll start with the tracker piece. Again, this can look overwhelming. You don't have to use the tracker at all. In fact, in the beginning of my journey with this app, I didn't use the tracker, but it can be extremely helpful. And we have customized this, or the Brett Boyer Foundation, as they've made this customized My CHD Sidekick, they've customized this symptom tracker with common symptoms that CHD patients will be looking for, especially patients who are in between surgeries or single ventricle patients who are needing to track symptoms regularly. It's really helpful to just have this checklist. Sometimes you're not even really thinking about what symptoms to look for, but then you look at this list and you realize, oh, aha, yes, this is happening. So you can use the CHD symptom tracker. There are also many other trackers, again, that you can use or not in terms of logging medications. So let's say my husband and I were splitting up meds and I was doing the morning medications and he's doing the evening ones. We can log in when we give the medications and notate or make a note of when we administered them. And this really helps to keep everyone on the same page. It eliminates the need for a lot of paper that could get lost or your coffee gets spilled on it in our case. So this is a great way, again, to keep people on the same page. You can track different things with food and nutrition, sleeping. Really, it's almost endless. And then there's a notes section which again is open-ended. Let's say you're inpatient and you want to take notes during rounds, and you want these notes to be in a place where you're not going to lose them in the hospital. You can make notes here through the tracker.
This is certainly a feature I would have really taken advantage of. A lot of times during rounds, I was kind of fighting for my life, trying to hang in there and understand what they said. And to be able to write that down and keep up with it day by day, I mean, would still be a gift to me now to be able to look at the different things. But our prayer for everybody is that you look back and see how far you've come. Because I know that those post-surgery rounds, I mean, can be terrifying in the beginning, and but that you can see, especially those are another place that I would document who said why, what med they can't take and why. But that's, I would have been, tearing those notes sections up because I would have used that as my way to relay to everybody that was wanting an update each day on what was going on, the goals for the day, why they want goals for her for the day, and all of the things that we had discussed in rounds. So.
Yep. So it's so great to have everything in one place. And then one more thing we're going to showcase before we answer questions, because we want to respect everyone's time, is this document section. Again, use it as you want it. So if you want to upload documents that you're commonly searching for example, a copy of the front and back of your insurance card, how many times have you been asked for that? It can be medically related. So it could be like a letter or something in your My chart that you just don't want to dig for because you want to keep it very handy. You can
Mhm.
put any document there. You can also take pictures of anything. So if you're screenshotting things or if you're taking pictures of a nice card that somebody wrote when you were in the hospital and you might lose it, you're worried you might lose it, you can save it here. So again, very open-ended, very useful. And Ellen, I think you may have some other things
I
you
was,
want to add about the document.
yes, I have so many screenshots on my phone that I know were helpful to me when I took the screenshot, and then I go to find them and I can't. So if there's something in, you saw on Instagram that there was a therapy that you want to mention the next time you go to see your speech therapist or anything like that, this is the place to upload those screenshots and be prepared for your next therapy appointment, clinic appointment, whatever. You know where all of those things live, and it's in the document section.
Perfect.
But is that it before we jump
I
into
think
the Q&A?
we've covered almost every, I mean, I think we've covered all the features. Um,
Amazing.
hopefully haven't overwhelmed everyone though, and we're open to questions now.
So Jennifer Pizer, our executive director at the Brett Boyer Foundation, has been kind of manning the Q&A. So you're going to hear her voice come out, and she's going to read a couple of those questions to us.
Yeah, so we do have a question from Katie. She's asking, does the procedure section have a way to store provider contact information, like name, email, on-call number, etc.?
I think so. Can you scroll to that? Yes. So there's a notes section for each procedure. So in the notes section is where you could put the contact information for that surgeon or that surgeon's assistant. Most of these sections do have some sort of notes piece attached to it, which helps make it customizable and open-ended.
But then you also could put every provider that you have um, in that other section where we're documenting all of your care team.
Hmm.
I think we passed it up there, maybe.
Team, yep.
Yeah. And the team can be medical providers, but also anyone else you feel is important that's from a non-medical perspective or a therapist.
Yeah.
Um, if there's someone within the hospital system who has helped with navigating, who is a connector, who you feel like it's important for family members to be able to reach out to,
Katie, I hate to
especially
break it to you. That's you, sis.
Katie's on.
Your name is who people would be looking to. We know who to call when we need to get things worked out.
Katie's on Sophie's team.
We have another question from Leslie asking, are there any HIPAA issues with sharing this information?
Ashley, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, what I think about this app is that, first of all, you have the username and password, and I know the data is encrypted under the MyMejo platform. So if you print this out and leave it somewhere, to me, that's similar than, when you get discharged or have, a summary of your hospital visit and it's printed out. That's protected information. And so once it's out there, sitting on a table, you want to be careful with that, right? But this does not in any way conflict with my chart because it's parents deciding what information they want to share. And at the end of the day, we parents know that we're expected to go to these appointments and share all of this information, right? So often, the way that we do that is to write notes on a piece of paper. So this is actually, to me, a more secure way of keeping track of all of your child's information, having it be password protected, and choosing with whom you share that information.
And
Yes, and I
like,
think if I could add to that, Ashley, um, one thing to point out here is that HIPAA is really meant to protect your information within hospital and provider systems, but this is your information that you own. So you can choose to do whatever you want with it. So HIPAA doesn't really apply to this. This is no different than if you chose to put your own information anywhere. So that's a good question. But I think that's also one of the beauties of this is that it is your information to describe the way you want, to keep the way you want, to share the way you want, all of those things.
and you also have, the liberty of being able to say, I only want this provider to see this for 12 hours and then they do not have access. So, or this babysitter or whoever. And so if you choose, and trust to share that with them, you still can set limits on how long you want them to have access to it.
Yes. I think we're probably a little over time. So if anybody has additional questions that they want to send, we can certainly address those. We'll be sending a follow-up email with a recording of this webinar, as well as samples of this profile that have been shared with you for reference, and can certainly answer additional questions there as well.
For sure. I wanted to thank Ashley. You've poured so much time into helping us bring this to life and bring it, to fruition and make it available to people. We're so grateful for your family and for all the time you guys have sacrificed to help us bring this to the finish line.
Well, you
This
all did most of the work. It's a great team effort, and we're just thrilled to be able to do our small part. So thank you.
Well, the foundation, was created to try to continue Brett's legacy. And there's a lot of things that I'm so proud of that we do at our partner hospitals. But there's so many families that I still felt like we are missing. And what are we doing for every family, whether they are in Maine or Portland or LA or Nashville, wherever they are, how can we be a resource to them? And this was something that just really hit home to me about how much I felt like the keeper of all the information, and how much it also, as much as I wanted that control as her mom, it kept me from being able to leave, to step aside, to go for the walk that the care team that loved us knew I needed to take. And definitely my prayer for this resource is that it gives parents the freedom to be able to take care of themselves and know that they've left everything that they can at the bedside. And certainly in an inpatient environment where things feel like they're changing constantly. But also, so many people, as you know, when you get home and there is no nursing staff to help you, and there is no care team that you've loved and trusted your child's life with, there to help you manage those meds, it just can be extremely overwhelming. And if this can help people stay organized and empower them to allow someone else to help, I pray that it makes it easier and that it lightens their load a little bit. So it's going to be a work in progress to where we're constantly trying to figure out how to make it better and make it even more efficient. But I'm so proud of this, and I'm so grateful um, that we're able to do this with you.
Thank you, Ellen.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be sending this out to anybody that signed up for the webinar and wasn't able to join us. And for those that were here, we'll be sending this to your emails. And we will just look forward to keeping on trying to make this available to all the families that it could be helpful for. So thank you all so much. Thank you for supporting the foundation. Anybody that has had a part in bringing this to fruition, we're so grateful for you, and we look forward to doing things together in the future.